There is one piece of government identification you are legally required to display in public at all times. Not carried in a wallet, not folded in a drawer. Displayed in the open, on the outside of the object you travel in. It is bolted to the front and the back of your car. It is stamped in high contrast, and it was designed to be read from a distance, at night, in the rain, by a stranger. Everything else about you is difficult to follow. A face needs an angle. A phone needs a warrant. A name needs a database. Your license plate was engineered to be readable. For most of the last century, that barely mattered, because reading it still took a person standing there, writing it down. We have had machines that read plates since the 1980s. Toll booths, border crossings, car parks, fixed points, doing a narrow job. What changed is not the camera. What changed is that somebody stopped selling cameras and started selling the network. In under a decade, one company covered the United States with cameras that read your car, not at borders, not at toll booths, on the street outside your house. No election was held about it. Most of the people driving past them have never heard the name. This is how that happened. What those cameras actually record, and why the cameras were never the product. This is the object: a pole, a solar panel, a battery, a camera pointed at one lane of traffic, and a radio. The solar panel is the important part. It means the camera does not need a trench, a permit for mains power, or a road closure. 2 people can install it in an afternoon. The radio is the other important part. Nothing is stored in that box for long. Every image goes straight out to somewhere else, and that somewhere else is where this story actually lives. We still call these license plate readers. That stopped being accurate years ago. A modern unit records the plate, and then it records the make, the model, the color, the roof rack, the tow bar, the bumper stickers, the dent in the rear panel. Which means you no longer need a plate to find a car. You can ask for a silver estate with a roof box and 2 stickers on the tailgate and get every match. One of these on one street is a traffic camera with a good memory. That is genuinely all it is. The question this whole story turns on is what happens when there are 90,000 of them, and they can all talk to each other. The company is called Flock Safety. It was founded in 2017. Its stated mission, in its own words, is to eliminate crime. Asked whether it imagines a camera on every street corner, its chief executive has said yes, and has said he imagines an America where crime no longer exists. In 8 years, it went from nothing to a valuation above $7 billion. More than 5,000 of the roughly 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. More than 1,000 private customers. Somewhere above 90,000 cameras. That last number needs a caveat, and it is the most revealing number in the story. About 20,000 of those cameras have been publicly reported. The 90,000 figure is an estimate because there is no register and nobody is required to tell you where they are. There is no map of this network. That is not an oversight. That is the design. Between them, billions of photographs a month. None of that is the interesting part. Cameras that read plates are 40 years old. What was new was the invoice. Before Flock, if a city wanted 100 of these, it bought 100 of these. Capital expenditure, a procurement process, a council vote. Most cities simply could not afford it, so most cities did not do it. Flock does not sell you cameras. It leases them to you by subscription, per camera, per year. No capital cost, no asset on the books, and, in many places, no vote. Because a subscription can sit inside a departmental budget that a purchase of that size could not. Which is how the pitch works. It is cheaper than hiring officers. It scales in units of 1. And you can start next month. We spend a lot of our time mapping cameras. Ours are the public ones, the feeds their owners already put on the open internet. 177,000 of them on a map anyone can open, Keep that number in mind, because it comes back at the end, and not in the way you would expect. Because the subscription is not what made this network national. The sharing did. A single agency's cameras cover a single agency's roads. A car that leaves that jurisdiction disappears, so the obvious feature is to let two agencies share what they see. This is not new either. A competitor, Vigilant Solutions, bought by Motorola in 2019, ran a sharing network a decade earlier. Its own marketing compared adding another agency to adding a friend on social media. And it worked exactly like that. A police department in California sharing with 1,000 or 2,000 other agencies. A department in Pennsylvania sharing with officers in Honolulu. What Flock changed was the shape. Not sharing with one customer at a time. Joining a network. A statewide one or a national one. Every agency that contributes its cameras can search every other contributor's cameras, including the private ones, the neighborhood associations, the business parks, the shopping centers, which is the same mechanism that built every social network you've ever used. Each new member makes the thing more valuable to everyone already inside it, which makes the next member easier to sign. And it gave the company a way in that no competitor had. You do not need to win the police department first. You sell to the homeowners associations and to the businesses. And then you go to the police department and tell them they do not have to buy anything because the camera's already up. Here is what that produces, and it is worth being precise about it, because this is the line the whole argument sits on. One camera gives you a fact. This car was on this road at this minute. A network gives you a pattern. Where that car sleeps, where it is on a Tuesday morning, which building it sits outside for 9 hours a day, which other cars are repeatedly in the same places at the same times, which is a workable definition of who you know. The company's answer to this is that its cameras do not track people. They take photographs, and that a license plate is not personal information because the state issues it for the express purpose of identifying vehicles in public. Both of those things are true. Neither of them is the point. A photograph is not tracking. 10,000 photographs, indexed, searchable, and kept, is tracking. And the word for the difference is not cameras. It is the index. This is the part we think about a lot because it is the part we build. The cameras are not the product. The searchable layer on top of them is. That is true for them, and it is true for us. The difference is who is allowed to open it. Start with the simple failure, the one where the technology does not work. Testing has found errors in how these cameras read plates. A misread plate matched against a stolen vehicle list produces a stop. There are documented cases of drivers being pulled over at gunpoint, held, and released because a number was wrong by one character. Then, the effectiveness question. The research is not one-sided, and it is not flattering in either direction. These systems do measurably recover more stolen vehicles. They show little to no effect on crime rates more broadly. But the failures are not the argument. The argument is what happens when it all works perfectly. As one critic put it, if you put a tracker on every person in a city, you would solve every crime in that city. That is not a defense of the tracker, because the United States already decided this question in a narrow form. Putting a GPS tracker on someone's car requires a warrant. Pulling the location history off their phone requires a warrant. A dense enough camera network produces the same output as both of those, for everyone, continuously. And it has never required a warrant for anybody, because each individual photograph is of a public road. And the output is not abstract. These systems have been used to log who attended gun shows, who attended places of worship, who attended political rallies. Not because anyone had to justify it, because the cars were there and the cameras were already running. Every search on the national network requires the officer to type a reason. In 2025, the outlet 404 Media obtained those records. Among the reasons officers had typed were the word immigration, the initials I.C.E, and ERO, the name of that agency's enforcement and removal division. This matters because of something structural about American law. States disagree about what a crime is. In some states, helping someone obtain an abortion is illegal. In others, obstructing that same access is illegal. Two agencies working at opposite purposes are not supposed to be able to reach into each other's evidence. A shared national index means they can. Some states wrote laws specifically to prevent it. In California, local police are restricted from sharing plate data with out-of-state and federal authorities in order to keep immigration enforcement out of local policing. Public sharing lists show most California departments following that law. They also show some departments, including El Cajon, sharing across the entire country. In Colorado, local officers were found to have given their network passwords to federal authorities, who then ran searches connected to immigration enforcement. Which is when this stopped being a technology story. Town halls filled up. Councils that had signed subscriptions 3 years earlier discovered they could not say who else was searching their cameras. The company's position is that where state legislation exists, it helps its customers comply with it. Following the reporting, it removed Illinois, California, and Virginia from its national lookup tool. On the specific question of federal access, the company said it had no federal contracts and none with I.C.E. 1 month after that, it confirmed a previously undisclosed pilot program with Customs and Border Protection, which gave federal agents an account from which they could invite individual police departments into direct data sharing. In August of 2025, the company paused federal work altogether, citing community concern. It described the pause as temporary and said it still intends to work with federal agencies. Notice what the pause concedes. Not that the capability was wrong, that the timing was. In 2025, the same company launched drones sold as a first responder that does not need a shift pattern, which tells you the plate was never the ceiling. The plate was the entry point, because it was the one identifier already sitting in the open. And this is not only American. The United Kingdom has run a national plate reading network for years, older and more centralized than anything in this story. Other countries have their own. What is unusual about the American version is not the surveillance. It is that a private company assembled it, from the bottom up, one subscription at a time. So here is the honest problem with a story like this. It is exhausting. There is too much of it, and there is very little any one person can do about any of it. And the reasonable response is to stop caring. But it is worth being precise about what the thing actually is, because the precision is the only part that is useful. The cameras are not the problem. The cameras were always going to exist. The index is the problem. And the index is invisible, which is why nobody voted on it. We run one of the largest public camera maps on the internet, 177,000 of them. And every one is a feed somebody already chose to broadcast. Then the things that move. 11,000 aircraft in the air right now. 37,000 ships at sea. And then it stops being about what you can see. 1,500 of those ships are under sanctions. 300 aircraft too. Nothing in the photograph tells you that. The list does. 2,800 verified war events from the last 90 days. 1,400 of them with the footage attached, geolocated, checked, and opened. 990 kilometers of active front line. 56 zones where satellite navigation is being jammed. You cannot photograph a jamming zone. It exists only as a layer. Underneath all of it, 35,000 power installations, 48,000 airports, 4,000 companies, and the 15,000 assets they own. That is more cameras than the company in this video has. And it is still not the same thing, because they never sold cameras. They sold a searchable history of where your car has been. We cannot switch their cameras off. Nobody can. What can be done is the other half. Build the index in the open, put every layer on it, and let anyone open it. Without a contract, a badge, or a subscription. The capability is getting built either way. The only question still open is who is allowed to look. Free, no sign up. This is Argos Atlas. 177,000 public cameras and more than 150,000 other geolocated points. We never blink.